I never imagined a family dinner would change everything. For 6 months, I had been sleeping in my beat-up Honda, cramped between textbooks and dirty laundry while working 2 jobs to pay tuition. Mom was fighting cancer, and every spare dollar went to her treatment. The contrast between my reality and my wealthy relatives was stark. My cousins flaunted designer clothes while I struggled to afford ramen. That night, they discovered my secret in the worst way possible. Before I share how my life changed forever that night, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever felt judged for doing what it takes to survive. Trust me, what happened next shocked even me. My life had not always been this difficult. I grew up in a comfortable middle-class home in Connecticut with parents who supported my dreams and a sense that anything was possible if I worked hard enough. That foundation crumbled when I turned 14, and my father announced he was leaving us for his secretary. The divorce was messy, leaving my mother heartbroken and our finances in shambles. The real blow came 2 years later when Mom was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. The medical bills piled up faster than the collection notices, and suddenly the college fund my parents had carefully built disappeared into a black hole of treatments, medications, and hospital stays. Despite everything, I managed to get accepted to Westbrook University, one of the most prestigious schools in the state. I was the first person in our immediate family to attend college, and my mother beamed with pride when the acceptance letter arrived. She tried to hide the worry in her eyes about how we would afford it, but I saw it anyway. "I will figure it out, Mom," I promised her. "You focus on getting better." I refused to let her down, which meant taking responsibility not just for my education, but for helping with her ongoing medical expenses too. Scholarships covered about half my tuition, but that still left thousands of dollars each semester, plus books, supplies, and living expenses. My first job was at Sunnyside Diner, where I worked the early morning shift from 4:30 a.m. until 11:30 a.m., serving coffee to cranky commuters and cleaning up after the breakfast rush. The manager, Doris, was a tough but fair woman who appreciated my reliability, even if I sometimes dozed off while refilling salt shakers during slow periods. My second job started at midnight at a 24-hour convenience store called Quick Stop, where I manned the register until 4 a.m., then rushed to the diner without more than a quick splash of water on my face in the gas station bathroom. Between shifts, I attended classes, studied in the library, and occasionally visited Mom when she was feeling strong enough for company. At first, I was optimistic about making it all work. I created elaborate schedules in a worn notebook, allocating every minute of my day with military precision. 4 hours of sleep seemed doable when you are 19 and running on determination. I convinced myself this was just temporary until Mom recovered and my scholarship package improved. The wealthy side of my family existed in a different universe entirely. My Uncle James, my mother's older brother, had made a fortune in commercial real estate development. His sprawling estate in Greenwich featured a swimming pool shaped like a dollar sign, which I always found ironic rather than impressive. Uncle James himself was not particularly obnoxious about his wealth, but he had been absent during my mother's illness, sending occasional checks rather than emotional support. His children, my cousins Amanda and Travis, were 26 and 24 respectively, and had never known a moment of financial hardship. Amanda had just completed a master's degree at an Ivy League university paid for entirely by her father and Travis, worked at my uncle's company in what everyone knew was a manufactured position with an inflated salary. Family gatherings were exercises in uncomfortable contrasts. While they discussed vacations to Bali and new luxury vehicles, I nodded and smiled, offering vague updates about school when asked. They never openly mocked my comparatively ordinary life, but their condescending tone when asking about my little jobs made it clear where I stood in the family hierarchy. When the annual summer family reunion at Uncle James's estate approached, I seriously considered skipping it. The thought of pretending everything was fine for an entire evening exhausted me more than my grueling work schedule. But Mom insisted I go. "Family is family, Camille," she said, her voice weak but insistent. "And you need a proper meal. You are getting too skinny." She was right about the meal part, at least. My diet consisted mainly of expired sandwiches, the convenience store would otherwise throw away, and leftover pancakes from the diner. The prospect of Uncle James's catered buffet was admittedly enticing. The day of the gathering, I finished my diner shift, attended an afternoon class, then headed to the campus gym, where I had maintained my membership solely for shower access. I scrubbed away the smell of bacon grease and convenience store coffee, then changed into my one decent outfit, a button-down shirt and slacks borrowed from a classmate for job interviews. I parked my Honda, which had been my bedroom for the past 6 months, 3 blocks away from my uncle's mansion. No one needed to know how bad things had gotten, at least not yet. The sprawling estate took my breath away every time I visited. A circular driveway wrapped around an ornate fountain where water danced in choreographed patterns illuminated by lights that shifted between shades of blue and purple. The mansion itself stood 3 stories tall, its cream-colored exterior accented with large windows that revealed glimpses of crystal chandeliers and abstract artwork within. A valet offered to park my car, but I quickly declined with a practiced excuse about leaving soon for another commitment. The last thing I needed was for someone to discover the pillow and blanket in my back seat, or the plastic containers of toiletries and ramen packages tucked under the passenger seat. Inside, the marble foyer opened to a grand living room where relatives mingled with glasses of champagne. The caterers circulated with trays of appetizers that probably cost more than I made in a day. I grabbed a stuffed mushroom and savored it slowly, pretending I was not starving. "Camille, you made it, my Aunt Patricia." Uncle James's wife, air kissed near both my cheeks, careful not to spill her drink. "How is your mother doing?" "Better this week," I said, offering the response that caused the least concern while still acknowledging reality. "The new medication seems to be helping." "Wonderful, wonderful," she said, already scanning the room for more interesting conversations. "Help yourself to food." James ordered far too much as usual. I did not need to be told twice. I loaded a plate with prime rib garlic, mashed potatoes and roasted vegetables, finding a quiet corner to eat, where I could observe without being observed. The food tasted so good I had to restrain myself from groaning with pleasure after months of gas station hot dogs and diner scraps. My momentary peace was interrupted when Amanda spotted me and sauntered over, champagne flute in hand. Her designer dress probably cost more than a month of my mother's medication. "Well, look who emerged from the library," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I was telling Dad you might have died since we have not seen you at any family functions lately." "Been busy," I replied between bites. "School and work." She tilted her head, her gaze dropping to my shoes, which were visibly worn despite my best efforts to clean them. "Still working those cute little side jobs. I thought you would have found something more suitable for someone with college education by now." I swallowed my irritation along with a bite of prime rib, still building my resume. Before she could respond, Travis joined us, his hand on the shoulder of a woman I had never met, presumably his latest girlfriend. "Cousin Camille," he exclaimed, too loudly. "Did you see my new car? Just picked up an Aston Martin last week. 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. He pulled keys from his pocket and dangled them like bait. Want to see it? The keys to my Honda were buried deep in my pocket where they would stay. The last thing I needed was a comparison between his luxury sports car and my mobile bedroom. Maybe later, I said. Great food here. Uncle James appeared then, clapping me on the back with enough force to nearly dislodge the food from my mouth. His robust frame and booming voice commanded attention wherever he went. Camille, good to see you, son. How are classes going? His question seemed genuinely interested, unlike the performative concern from others. Going well, sir. Made Dean's List last semester. That is what I like to hear. He beamed, then launched into a story about his own college days that involved considerably more partying than studying. His obliviousness to my actual circumstances was almost comforting. At least someone believed my life was proceeding normally. As the evening progressed, my discomfort grew. The mask of normalcy became increasingly difficult to maintain as relatives inquired about my apartment, my social life, my career plans, all things that had been sacrificed to my current reality. Each vague answer felt like another small betrayal of myself. While refilling my water glass, I overheard Amanda and Travis in conversation with their cousins from their mother's side. Camille is such a mystery these days, Amanda was saying. I think he is embarrassed about his situation. Classic failure to launch, Travis added with a chuckle. Some people just cannot get it together, you know. I gripped my glass tighter, knuckles turning white. They knew nothing about my life, the impossible choices I faced daily, or the determination it took just to keep going. Their judgment based on superficial observations made my stomach turn. My hand shook slightly as I reached for more water, and I knocked over someone's wine glass, sending red liquid cascading across the pristine white tablecloth and onto my borrowed pants. I am so sorry, I stammered, grabbing napkins in a futile attempt to contain the spreading stain. Do not worry about it, Uncle James said kindly. Go clean up. There is a bathroom off the main hall. I nodded gratefully and escaped the room, mortification heating my face. The bathroom was palatial with marble countertops and plush hand towels that probably cost more than my textbooks. I did my best with the stain, but it was clear I needed a change of clothes. With no other option, I slipped out the side door and headed toward my car, hoping to retrieve the spare pants I kept there for emergencies. The cool evening air was a relief after the stifling atmosphere inside. I had almost reached the street when I heard footsteps behind me. Where are you sneaking off? To Cousin Travis's voice carried through the darkness, accompanied by Amanda's distinctive laugh. I turned to find them following me, clearly amused by what they perceived as my embarrassed retreat. Just getting something from my car, I explained, heart sinking, as I realized my carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. Is your car even here? I did not see it in the driveway, Amanda remarked suspiciously. Park down the street, I said, continuing to walk, hoping they might lose interest. They did not. Instead, they trailed me all the way to my Honda, watching as I unlocked the door and reached inside. The interior light illuminated the reality I had been hiding: a pillow and blanket in the back seat, clothes hanging from a makeshift line stretched between handles, textbooks and notebooks piled on the passenger seat, and various containers. Organizing my meager possessions. Oh my God, Amanda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Are you living in that thing? The shock in her voice was genuine, but it quickly transformed into something worse: pity mixed with amusement. Travis peered over my shoulder, taking in the details of my mobile home. Holy shit, you are homeless, he said, not bothering to hide his fascination. Does Uncle James know about this? I am not homeless, I said, defensively, grabbing my spare pants and shutting the door quickly. It is just temporary until my scholarship funds come through. And no, no one knows, and I would appreciate if you kept it that way." Amanda and Travis exchanged glances that made my heart sink. "This is too good," Travis said, pulling out his phone and snapping a picture of my car. "The family golden boy is actually living like a vagrant. Please do not do this," I said, my voice tight. "I am just trying to get through school and help my mom. It is not easy." "Life is not easy for anyone," Amanda said dismissively. "But most people manage without resorting to sleeping in cars." My attempts to explain fell on deaf ears as they continued to examine my situation with the detached curiosity of tourists observing an exotic exhibit. Their privilege had insulated them from ever understanding the desperation that led to my choices. "Wait until everyone hears about this," Travis said, already typing on his phone. Cousin Camille, the car dweller. My stomach twisted with dread as I followed them back toward the house, pleading for discretion. Their responses were non-committal smiles that promised nothing good. Back inside, I changed quickly in the bathroom, my mind racing with damage control strategies. When I rejoined the party, I immediately noticed the shifted atmosphere. Small groups had formed with glances thrown in my direction, followed by hushed conversations. Amanda and Travis moved between clusters, clearly sharing their discovery. I considered leaving immediately, but that would only confirm whatever embellished version of events they were spreading. Instead, I fixed a neutral expression on my face and approached the buffet, pretending interest in dessert I had no appetite for. The moment I had been dreading arrived when Amanda clinked her glass loudly, drawing everyone's attention. "Everyone, I have an interesting discovery to share," she announced, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "Our cousin Camille has been hiding a secret from us all." All eyes turned to me, curious and expectant. It seems that despite his academic achievements, Camille has been experiencing some housing difficulties. Her pause was theatrical. "We just discovered he has been living in his car for who knows how long." The collective gasp from family members might have been comical if it were not so humiliating. Travis jumped in, eager to elaborate. "You should see it," he said enthusiastically. "Blankets, clothes hanging everywhere, little containers of ramen noodles. It is like a homeless shelter on wheels." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd, mixed with expressions of shock and confusion. I stood frozen, feeling stripped bare before everyone, my carefully constructed dignity unraveling thread by thread. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. I contemplated simply walking out, getting in my Honda, and driving until this moment was just a painful memory. Pride warred with shame as I stood rooted to the spot, unable to defend myself against truths I had worked so hard to conceal. But before I could decide on a course of action, Uncle James stepped forward, his expression not one of amusement, but of serious concern. "Is this true, Camille?" he asked, his usual boisterous tone replaced by something quieter and more intent. I swallowed hard. "It is a temporary situation." I managed my voice steadier than I felt. Amanda and Travis continued their performance, describing my living arrangements with exaggerated detail and poorly concealed glee. But their laughter faltered as they noticed their father's expression growing increasingly grave. "That is enough," Uncle James said sharply, cutting off Travis mid-sentence. He turned to me. "Camille, I would like to speak with you privately. In my study, please." Murmurs followed us as I walked beside my uncle through the crowded room, past curious relatives, and toward a hallway leading to the back of the house. Travis and Amanda exchanged uncertain glances, their moment of triumph suddenly less satisfying. Uncle James's study was an imposing room lined with leather-bound books and decorated with awards and photographs documenting his business success. He gestured for me to sit in one of two leather armchairs positioned near a window overlooking the manicured garden, then closed the door behind us. For a moment, he simply looked at me as if seeing me clearly for the first time. When he finally spoke, his question was direct. "How long have you been living in your car?" There seemed little point in further deception. "About 6 months," I admitted. "Since the winter semester started. And the jobs I recall your mother mentioning you were working." "2. One at a diner from 4:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Then classes, then overnight at a convenience store from midnight to 4 a.m. He frowned, calculating. "When do you sleep?" "When I can." "Between shifts sometimes during lectures." I shrugged. "You get used to it." "And your studies dean's list," I said, unable to keep a note of pride from my voice. 3.8 GPA. Uncle James nodded slowly, then did something unexpected. He walked to a framed photograph on his wall and removed it, revealing a small safe. After entering a combination, he withdrew an old, worn leather wallet and brought it to where I Saturday. "Do you know how I started in real estate?" he asked, opening the wallet to reveal a faded photo. I shook my head. "With this," he said, pointing to the image of a rusty red pickup truck. "I lived in that truck for almost a year while saving for my first property investment. Showered at the YMCA, ate canned beans, worked 3 jobs." I stared at him in disbelief. The story of Uncle James's rise always began with his first successful development deal, never with any mention of hardship or struggle. "The family does not know this part of my history," he continued, returning the wallet to its hiding place. "Patricia does not even know. I was ashamed at the time, and later it seemed unnecessary to mention." "But your children," I began. "Have never wanted for anything," he finished, sighing heavily. "And that I am beginning to realize may have been my greatest mistake as a father." He returned to sit across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "What I see in you, Camille, is what I once was. Determined, resourceful, willing to sacrifice comfort for a larger goal." His expression darkened. "What I see in my children tonight shames me deeply." I shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. Uncle James had always been a distant figure, successful and intimidating. This unexpected connection and vulnerability left me speechless. "Here is what I am going to propose," he said after a moment. "I have a small apartment above the garage at my office building. It is used occasionally for visiting business associates, but it is empty most of the time. It is yours if you want it." "I cannot accept charity," I said automatically. Years of fierce independence, making the words reflexive. "It is not charity," he countered. "I also need part-time help at the office. Filing, data entry, basic analysis. The apartment comes with the position. 20 hours a week, flexible around your class schedule, pays $18 an hour." The amount made my head spin after months of minimum wage labor. "That is very generous, but it is not generosity. It is business," he insisted. "You have proven your work ethic and intelligence under circumstances that would break most people. Those are qualities I value far more than a business degree or family connection." The implied comparison to his own children hung in the air between us. "I do not need an answer right now," he added, standing. "But the offer stands regardless of what you decide." We returned to the party, where an uncomfortable hush fell as we entered. Uncle James surveyed the room, taking in the curious stares and whispered conversations. Amanda and Travis stood near the fireplace, their earlier triumph now tempered with uncertainty. "I would like to say something to everyone," Uncle James announced, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. Tonight I was reminded of something important about our family values. All attention fixed on him as he continued. "Success is not measured by what we are given, but by what we overcome. Some of us," his gaze swept meaningfully toward his children, "have been fortunate enough to enjoy advantages without understanding their true value." Amanda shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in the contents of her champagne flute. "Others," he placed a hand briefly on my shoulder, "have faced significant challenges with dignity and determination that should humble us all." The room remained silent, the atmosphere thick with unexpected gravity. "Camille has maintained academic excellence while working 2 full-time jobs and dealing with his mother's illness. If there is anyone in this room who has demonstrated the true meaning of character and commitment, it is him. I am proud to call him my nephew, and certain members of this family would do well to follow his example rather than mock his struggles." Travis's face had turned an interesting shade of red, while Amanda seemed to be fighting the urge to disappear entirely. The family's attention had shifted, and I found myself on the receiving end of impressed and thoughtful looks rather than pity or amusement. The remainder of the evening was a blur of emotions. Relief at no longer having to maintain my facade. Vindication at my uncle's unexpected support. Anxiety about accepting his offer and what it might mean for my carefully constructed independence. And beneath it all, a tentative hope that perhaps my impossible situation had finally reached a turning point. The days following that revelatory family gathering brought swift changes to my life. Uncle James wasted no time helping me move my few possessions from my Honda to the apartment above his company's garage the very next day. Though small by most standards, the studio felt palatial after months of car living. A real bed-hot shower and kitchen where I could prepare actual meals rather than scavenging convenience store leftovers seemed like unimaginable luxuries. I started my new position in the accounting department of James's real estate firm, learning the financial side of property management. The work was more challenging than serving coffee or scanning convenience store items, engaging my mind and teaching me skills relevant to my business major. Best of all, the flexible schedule and improved pay allowed me to quit my overnight convenience store job, though I kept my morning diner shifts out of loyalty to Doris and the regular customers who had become something like friends. With more sleep and better nutrition, my academic performance improved even beyond my previous achievements. For the first time in months, I could focus on lectures without fighting to keep my eyes open and complete assignments without the constant pressure of exhaustion. My mother noticed the change in me immediately when I visited her after my first week in the apartment. "You look human again," she teased, her own eyes brighter than I had seen in months. Uncle James had also arranged for a consultation with a specialist for her, resulting in an adjusted treatment plan that seemed to be reducing her symptoms with fewer side effects. The situation with my cousins, however, remained complicated. Amanda avoided me entirely at first, embarrassed by her behavior and her father's public rebuke. Travis, on the other hand, oscillated between awkward attempts at friendliness and barely concealed resentment. 3 weeks after I started working at the company, Travis cornered me in the break room during lunch. "So you are Dad's new protege," he said, making no effort to hide his bitterness. Quite the rags to riches story. I considered several responses before settling on the most honest one. "I am grateful for the opportunity to learn from him, yes. You know, he has barely spoken to me since that dinner." Travis continued, his voice lowering. 24 years as his son, and suddenly you are the golden child after a single night of drama. I never asked for any of this. I replied, maintaining eye contact. And I am sorry if my situation has affected your relationship with your father. Travis laughed without humor. My situation? You mean my homelessness that you paraded around like some badge of honor? I never paraded anything. You and Amanda exposed something I was trying to keep private. He was quiet for a moment, conflict evident on his face. Why did you not just ask for help earlier? If things were so bad, the question caught me off guard with its genuine confusion. Because that is not how I was raised, I said finally. My problems were my responsibility. Well, your responsibility is apparently showing up all of us who had the misfortune of not having to sleep in cars, he muttered. Despite his hostility, I recognized something beneath it, fear. Travis had built his identity around being Uncle James's son and heir, never developing the skills or resilience to stand on his own merits. My arrival threatened that precarious foundation. I am not trying to replace you, I said carefully. I am just trying to build a better life for myself and help my mom. Travis did not respond immediately, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded once and left the break room without another word. It was not reconciliation, but it felt like the beginning of something more honest between us. The following months brought continued improvements. By the 6-month mark, I had been promoted to junior analyst within Uncle James's company. My mother's latest scans showed significant improvement, and I had established a comfortable routine balancing work, school, and even the occasional social activity, a concept that had seemed impossible during my car-dwelling days. Uncle James proved to be a demanding but insightful mentor, challenging me to understand every aspect of the real estate business from property valuation to market analysis. I am not training you for a job, he would say. I am training you for a career. My relationship with my cousins evolved slowly. Amanda eventually thawed enough to engage in polite conversation at family gatherings, though a genuine connection remained elusive. Travis's journey was more complex, involving several heated arguments, followed by grudging respect after we worked together on a difficult project. The most significant conversation came nearly a year after that fateful dinner, when Travis joined me for a rare after-work drink. I was jealous, he admitted after his second beer. Not just of Dad's attention, but of your. I do not know what to call it. Drive, purpose, desperation is probably more accurate, I replied with a small smile. He shook his head. No, it is more than that. You had nothing, and you still worked harder than anyone I know. I had everything handed to me, and I never pushed myself at all. Different circumstances shape different people, I offered. Maybe he said thoughtfully, but I am starting to think I have been using my circumstances as an excuse rather than a foundation. That conversation marked a turning point in our relationship, not toward friendship exactly, but toward mutual understanding. Travis began taking his position at the company more seriously, putting in extra hours and asking substantive questions. Uncle James noticed the change, and their relationship showed signs of repair. By graduation day, my life had transformed beyond recognition. I stood on the university stage, accepting my diploma with my mother, watching from the audience her cancer in remission alongside Uncle James and, surprisingly, both my cousins. The journey from my car to that stage had been arduous, but the lessons learned along the way had shaped me in ways no classroom ever could. The most meaningful development came after the ceremony when Uncle James proposed a new initiative, a scholarship program for students facing housing insecurity. He offered to provide matching funds if I would help establish and administer it. Your experience should not be repeated, he said. but your determination should be rewarded and replicated. Looking back now, I recognize that the most valuable lesson from my journey was not about perseverance or resourcefulness, though both were certainly required. It was about the masks we wear and the judgments we make based on appearances. My cousins had judged me for a situation they could not comprehend, just as I had judged them for privileges they had never chosen. True dignity does not come from perfect circumstances, but from how we face imperfect ones. And family, I learned, is not defined solely by blood, but by who stands beside you when the masks fall away. So what about you? Have you ever been judged unfairly based on appearances, or had someone surprise you with unexpected support during difficult times? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please subscribe and share this video with someone who might need to hear that their current struggles do not define their ultimate destination. Thank you for listening. And remember that sometimes our greatest challenges reveal our greatest strength.